You work 60 hours a week. You show up early, stay late, say yes when others say no. You follow the rules. You do the right thing. You sacrifice your time, your energy, sometimes even your health, for your job, for the team, for the promise that someday it'll all pay off. You're loyal. You're honest. You take pride in doing things the right way. But somehow you're stuck, watching someone else, someone who cuts corners, talks more than they work, knows the right people, rise higher, faster. They're living the life you thought you'd earned. And you're left asking yourself, what did I do wrong? But maybe that's not the right question. Maybe the real question is, what lie have I been told? Because from the time we're kids, we're taught that if we just work hard enough, play fair, keep our heads down, and do good work, success will come. That effort equals outcome. That loyalty gets rewarded. That eventually, someone will notice. Eventually, it'll all make sense. But what if that formula is broken? Or worse, what if it was never real to begin with? Friedrich Nietzsche, the German philosopher who made a career out of exposing uncomfortable truths, once wrote that moral labor, the kind of work society praises for being humble, obedient, sacrificial, is not noble. It's a trap, a kind of spiritual slavery, not designed to uplift you, but to keep you in place. And if you think about it, maybe he's right. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. In a world where power decides outcomes, morality is often used to control the people who don't have any. We're told that being good is its own reward. That if you're patient, if you suffer long enough, eventually fairness will win. But that's not how this world works. Life isn't fair. Life is competitive. Life is political. And the system we serve? It doesn't reward virtue, it rewards value. Not even the value you create, but the value you control. That's why a nurse working 12-hour shifts, saving lives, gets paid less than a kid selling get-rich-quick courses in a rented Lamborghini on TikTok. That's why blue-collar workers can spend their whole lives grinding and retire with barely enough to live on. Meanwhile, someone who understands how to manipulate perception or control capital walks away with millions. It's not your fault for believing the myth. The myth was built for people like you, to keep you compliant, to keep you working, to keep you from asking the dangerous questions. Who benefits from my loyalty? Who profits from my exhaustion? Why does the system praise hard work, but reward something else entirely? Nietzsche didn't say you should stop working. He didn't glorify laziness or selfishness. What he challenged was the idea that suffering without reward is sacred, that submission is virtue. He called this belief system slave morality, a mindset born not from strength, but from weakness. A morality that tells you it's better to obey than to lead, better to suffer than to question, better to be good than to be free. And if you feel stuck, even though you've done everything right, you're not crazy. You're waking up. You're starting to see the truth. The world isn't broken. It's working exactly the way it was designed to. Because let's be real, the people who rise to the top, they're not always the most skilled. They're not always the most honest or the most selfless. They're often the ones who understand power, how to move through it, how to claim it, and how to separate their worth from the system's approval. So maybe the question isn't, why am I not being rewarded? Maybe it's, why do I keep believing I will be? Let's dig deeper. Let's look at the contradiction hiding in plain sight. If hard work leads to success, then why do the hardest working people in society often struggle just to survive? Think about it. Construction workers who get up before dawn, work their bodies into exhaustion, and still live paycheck to paycheck. Nurses who sprint between patients for 12-hour shifts, skipping meals, working holidays. Truck drivers, janitors, delivery people, people who literally make the world run, barely getting by. And on the other side, a TikToker selling affiliate links is making more in one day than that nurse earns in a month. You've seen it, you feel it, and it's not a glitch. This isn't some one-off mistake. This is the system. Because while labor builds the world, labor doesn't control it. Control is the difference. The people who earn the most, CEOs, investors, politicians, they're not the ones breaking their backs. They operate in a completely different arena, one based on leverage, perception, and positioning. They don't just work. They maneuver. They influence. They own. We live in a world that rewards scale. And the brutal truth is, physical labor can't scale. It can be replaced, automated, outsourced. But control over capital, people, ideas, that scales fast. A nurse can treat one patient at a time. An investor can move billions with a click. That's why control pays more than contribution. Now, here's where the lie of moral labor becomes especially cruel. We're taught that suffering is noble, that enduring hardship is honorable, that people who serve selflessly, who give everything and expect nothing, are the moral backbone of society. And they are. But here's the problem. Praise doesn't pay rent. Sacrifice doesn't build wealth. And morality doesn't come with power. While the working class is told, be grateful, be good, the elite are trained in how to manipulate the system, how to acquire capital, how to gain power. They're not taught to serve, they're taught to rule. They're not learning submission, they're learning strategy. So again, let's ask the question. If moral labor is so essential, so righteous, so good, why doesn't it come with power? Why are the people we depend on the most also the most disposable? Why does society preach the gospel of hard work, then funnel all the rewards to those who manage, manipulate, and control? Nietzsche would say, because the moral code we follow wasn't designed to liberate the masses. It was created by those in power to pacify them. It glorifies submission. It teaches obedience. It promises future reward in exchange for present silence. And it works. Because if you believe that your suffering is sacred, that your endurance is noble, that being good means expecting nothing, you won't complain. You won't rebel. You'll just wait, and wait, and wait. And that's the trap. Because someday is the most powerful chain ever forged. So now the question becomes clear. If hard work doesn't lead to power, what does? And more importantly, are you ready to unlearn the lie you were raised to believe? To answer that, we have to dig into the roots. We have to understand how this belief that hard work always pays off became so deeply embedded in us. And why so many people still cling to it, even when life keeps showing them otherwise. The answer isn't just economic. It's psychological. It starts early, long before your first job, your first paycheck. From childhood, we're taught that the world is fair, that good things happen to good people, that justice always finds a way. Cartoons, school lessons, bedtime stories, they all reinforce the same feel-good message. Be kind, be honest, be diligent, and in the end, life will make sense. But here's the problem. That belief has a name. It's called the just world fallacy, the idea that the world is inherently fair. That if you do the right thing, the universe will reward you. That everything balances out. It's a beautiful idea. It helps people feel in control. It makes suffering easier to swallow. But it's not true. And in a system built around power, not fairness, clinging to that belief isn't just naive. It's dangerous. Because while you're working late, fixing other people's mistakes, staying polite, grinding away, someone else is playing the board. They're building alliances, learning leverage, understanding how the game really works. You think you're being moral. They're being strategic. And in this world, strategy wins. That's why the engineer who quietly keeps the servers running gets laid off, while the exec with vague job titles and a loud social presence gets promoted. That's why the nurse loses her weekend bonus, while the hospital's PR budget triples. That's why the guy working the warehouse floor has to beg for a raise, while someone live streaming motivational quotes from a yacht makes 7 figures. You were taught to trust the latter. They were taught how to skip rungs. And here's where it gets really twisted. The system doesn't just fail to reward your hard work. It uses your belief in fairness to keep you locked in place. Because people who believe justice is coming don't complain. They don't question. They just wait. And the longer you wait, the easier you are to control. You've been taught to see your suffering as proof of your virtue. You've been trained to endure, not to escape. To serve, not to lead. To believe that if you just hold on long enough, your time will come. But what if that time never comes? This isn't just about money. It's about mindset. Because if you're using the wrong map, no matter how hard you walk, you're never going to reach the destination. The rules you were taught? They were designed to create good employees, not powerful people. And the people who taught them to you? They knew the truth. They just needed someone else to keep playing the game. So if the world isn't fair, if hard work doesn't equal reward, then what's the point? Should we all just give up? Become ruthless? Step on others to climb higher? That's the mistake most people make when they first wake up. They swing too far in the other direction. They think the only alternative to being exploited is becoming cold, manipulative, heartless. But that's not what Nietzsche taught. He wasn't glorifying cruelty. He wasn't saying you should throw away your morals. He was saying, stop confusing submission with virtue. Stop sacrificing your life for a system that feeds on your obedience. Stop mistaking endurance for strategy. Nietzsche's solution wasn't to destroy morality. It was to overcome the morality of weakness, to rise above it. He spoke of becoming the Übermensch, the overman, not a tyrant, not a villain, but a fully realized individual, someone who writes their own values, someone who sees through the lies, steps out of the cage, and builds something better. The Übermensch doesn't sit around hoping to be noticed. He defines his own worth. He doesn't wait to be promoted. He creates impact on his terms. He doesn't need the system's approval. He studies it, understands it, and when the rules no longer serve him, he writes new ones. You've seen people like this. The entrepreneur who left their corporate job to build something from scratch. The creator who risked everything to follow their vision. The investor who got laughed at, ignored, rejected, then rewrote the game. Think about Elon Musk. Fired from the company he helped create. Dismissed by critics as reckless. Told he was too extreme. Too ambitious. And yet, he kept going. Not because he was chasing approval, but because he had a vision and refused to let fear rule him. What separates people like that isn't just talent or luck. It's mindset. They don't wait for the system to recognize their value. They ask, why am I giving the system that power in the first place? That shift, from waiting to creating, from obeying to owning, that's the moment freedom begins. That's what Nietzsche pointed to. That's the path out of the moral labor trap. But it comes with a cost. Because breaking free means letting go of something that's deeply comforting. Your need to be seen as good, It means disappointing people who benefited from your silence. It means standing alone for a while you build something new. It means choosing sovereignty over safety. And that doesn't just take confidence. It takes courage. Because real strength isn't about control over others. It's about authorship. It's about writing a life that aligns with your real values, not the ones handed to you by a system designed to keep you docile. This isn't about becoming selfish. It's about becoming sovereign. So ask yourself, what would happen if you stopped waiting to be rewarded and started rewarding yourself? What would it look like to stop begging for a seat at the table and start building your own? You don't have to be ruthless, but you do have to be responsible for your own power. Because once you realize the system won't save you, you stop being a servant of it, and you start becoming the author of something better. So now that the illusion has been shattered, now that you've stopped waiting, stopped obeying, stopped sacrificing for a promise that was never meant to be kept, the question is, what comes next? What does action look like after awakening? What do you do after you've stopped chasing approval and started reclaiming your power? It starts with this. Kindness is not weakness, but strategic kindness? That's strength. See, too often people confuse being good with being passive. They think saying yes all the time, avoiding conflict, being endlessly agreeable, that's what it means to be virtuous. But Nietzsche would say, morality without consciousness is just obedience in disguise. The goal isn't to become cold. It's to become clear, to move through the world with both a moral compass and a strategy for survival. Strategic kindness means knowing when to help and when to walk away. It means reading people, not just trusting them. It means understanding context. When to speak up, when to stay silent, when to strike. It means not saying yes just to be liked. You say yes when it aligns with your goals, with your truth, with your strength. Because here's a hard truth most people don't want to hear. Not every job deserves your loyalty. Not every leader deserves your trust. Not every opportunity deserves your time. You've got to become the kind of person who knows when to walk away. When something no longer serves you, when it drains your energy, steals your time, erodes your values, you must be willing to leave. Not out of spite, but out of strength. Leaving is not failure. Sometimes it's the first step toward freedom. And that's where power comes in. Not power over others, not domination, but power within yourself. Power to say no. Power to set boundaries. Power to create. To choose. To build something that reflects your values, not someone else's blueprint. That might mean starting a business, or creating a second stream of income, or finally learning how influence works, not to manipulate, but to protect your vision. It might mean learning negotiation. Not to win every deal, but to stop being taken advantage of. It might mean saying, I'm not doing this anymore, and actually meaning it. These aren't betrayals of your morals. They're expressions of your maturity. Because if you don't learn how to play the power game, you will always be a pawn in it. But if you do learn, you don't have to lose your soul. You can play with clarity. You can lead with purpose. You can move through life on your terms. That's what Nietzsche meant when he talked about power, not the lust for dominance, but the will to become more. More than a servant, more than a cog, more than just the good employee. The will to become the author of your own value, to stop waiting for permission, to stop outsourcing your worth. And you can't do that if you treat morality like a cage. You have to treat it like a compass, one that points to your true north, not someone else's idea of what's respectable. So no, don't throw away your values. Don't become another status-chasing shark. But do learn how the world actually works. Understand leverage. Recognize when you're being used. Know the difference between being appreciated and being pacified. Because the future? It doesn't belong to the obedient. It belongs to the conscious. The ones who merge principle with power, empathy with edge. The ones who stop waiting for the world to change and start changing the terms of their own existence. So if you grew up believing that hard work was enough, that loyalty would pay off, that sacrifice would eventually be noticed, then maybe, right now, is your wake-up call. Not because hard work is meaningless, but because hard work without ownership, without strategy, without a plan for power, will keep you stuck. The real man, the real woman, the real human being who grows beyond the system, they don't just labor. They study the system. They question it. And when it no longer serves them, they build something new. That's the difference between surviving and leading, between being another brick in someone else's empire and becoming the architect of your own future. So if you're tired of waiting, if you're done with sacrificing without return, if you're ready to think deeper, move smarter, and live fully on your own terms, this is where it begins. Not with rage, not with rebellion for its own sake, but with awakening, with responsibility, with reclaiming your place in the world as someone who chooses, not just obeys. Because in the end, this life is yours. So don't just live by the rules you were handed. Write your own. And if you're looking for a place that challenges the old myths, that gives you philosophy you can actually use, ideas that don't just explain the world but help you reshape your role in it, then stick around. Subscribe. Because here, we're not just telling stories. We're reclaiming the pen, one idea at a time, one decision at a time, one powerful life at a time.